To the point, Graham Norton returns as the commentator. Credit, BBC One, 8 p.m. The annual musical extravaganza takes over BBC One with 3.5 hours of Europop. Portugal makes its debut as hosts at the Altice Arena in Lisbon, where for the first time since 2013, there will not be a big colourful LED screen. The organisers decided against one in favour of a more stripped-back stage, a fall in the popularity of novelty acts. Who remembers Russia's Singing Grannies in 2012 means that there will be a parade of solo singers, including X Factor 2016 runner-up and Finland's entry Sara Aalto, delivering soaring ballads and pop ditties. Graham Norton, marking his 10th stint in the commentator's chair, remains the best reason to watch this kitsch fest. With his dry put-downs, he acknowledges the contest's ridiculousness, but clearly finds it fun. If you're still awake at voting time, Mel Giedroyce will deliver the results of the UK's jury from London. Geopolitical voting means that Britain has fared badly of late, and issues such as Brexit could mean that the UK may never win Eurovision again, even though our entry, the catchy Storm by Suri, is up there. For some, Eurovision is past its sell-by date, but for millions of others, it's a few hours of camp escapism. Vicky Power, BBC One, 2 p.m. The Mendejos jungle is the setting as Castleford Tigers take on St Helens in the Challenge Cup. It is a decade since the Saints last lifted the famous trophy, but their good early season form means they will head into this contest with confidence. The Tigers last won the Cup back in 1986, and most recently reached the final in 2014, where they lost 23-10 to Leeds Rhinos. Harry Hill's Alien Fun Capsule, ITV, 7:30 p.m. Though it fails to reach the heights of TV Burp, Harry Hill's comedy panel show still elicits laughs from his surreal sense of fun and unusual guest lineup. This week, Cannon and Ball compete alongside Professor Robert Winston. Britain's Got Talent, ITV, 8 p.m. The tear duct-activating talent show continues to conquer the ratings with cute child performers and nifty variety acts. Judges Amanda Holden and Alicia Dixon are yet to deploy their golden buzzers as the fifth heat gets underway. Britain's Most Historic Towns, Channel 4, 8 p.m. Professor Alice Roberts winds up her amiable history series with a jaunt across the Irish Sea to what she calls Britain's most Victorian city, Belfast. With visits to shipyards and textile mills, she shows how the city was transformed from a swampy provincial town to an industrial powerhouse. Gold, 8 p.m. A who's who of leading lights, including Griff Rhys-Jones, Johnny Vegas, Una Stubbs and Nigel Havers, lend their comic weight to this affectionate spoof of TV whodunits. Think Midsummer Murders meets Coach Trip. Car Shares Sean Gibson stars as a tour operator who is leading a literary coach tour with a murder mystery author Jones, when the body count starts to rise. It's a gentle old-school carry-on. The Private Life of the Royal Academy, BBC Two, 9 p.m. 5 years in the making, and celebrating 250 years of the Academy, this in-depth peek behind the scenes shows how the august institution is modernising itself while preserving its old rituals. The contributors include Chief Executive Charles Saumarez-Smith and artist Gilbert George. VP Salamander, Blood Diamonds, BBC 4, 9 p.m. and 9:45 p.m. It looks like carelessness that, after his wife was murdered by the secret society Salamander in the first series, top cop Paul Gerardi Philip Peters allowed his daughter Sophie Violet Brakeman to disappear with former Salamander operative Jamie Boris Van Severin. But Jamie has incriminating evidence that everyone's after. So Gerardis' desperate search for his daughter ups the ante in this double bill of the twisty Belgian thriller. VP BBC One, 4:45 p.m. This Disney animation is an East meets West adventure with buckets of heart and soul, and is quite possibly Disney at its adorable, huggable, and most visually extravagant best. Hiro Hamada, a 14-year-old orphan living in the city of San Francisco, befriends Bimax, a 10-foot-tall, bright, white inflatable robot invented by his elder brother, who's killed in a mysterious fire at his laboratory. Terminator 2, Judgment Day 1991 ITV, 10:05 p.m. The special effects still look incredible, and this is a rare example of a sequel being better than its predecessor. Arnold Schwarzenegger gives one of the best performances of his career as the reprogrammed Terminator sent to protect teenager John Connor Edward Furlong, while the liquid T-1000 robot Robert Patrick still astonishes today. My Old Lady 2014 BBC Two, 10:20 p.m. Not Northern Ireland. Kevin Kline plays a broke American who inherits a Parisian flat but comes across a complication in the form of Maggie Smith's 92-year-old who has taken up residence there. There can be great pleasure in seeing egos pricked and lessons learned in this tightly wound chamber piece, but Smith firing as if she were the Dowager and Kristen Scott Thomas as her daughter are wasted. Sitting Pretty, Donald Glover Wright heads the cast. BBC 2, 10 p.m. NE, 10:55 p.m. Wales, 11 p.m. As a comedian, writer, director, actor and musician, Donald Glover's star continues to rise. Among other things, he'll be seen as a suitably roguish Lando Calrissian in the Star Wars film Sate, which is released later this month. Ahead of the showing of the second series of his Emmy Award-winning, critically acclaimed comedy on Fox UK in June, BBC 2 is airing the first one. The premise is simple. Earn Glover, a university dropout, returns to Atlanta, where his cousin Alfred Brian Tyree Henry, aka up-and-coming rapper Paperboy, is on the verge of making it big. Broken homeless, Earn hopes to piggyback on Paperboy's burgeoning career, but swiftly discovers the road to riches is not so easy. What makes Atlanta such a joy isn't the plot or even the pin-sharp dialogue, but rather Glover's willingness to experiment with tone and form. Homophobia, mental health and the Black Lives Matter movement are all addressed in a show that can spin off into surreal side alleys. One of the best of those comes in this opening episode and involves Paperboy's best friend, Darius the Wandry off-kilter Lakeith Stanfield, Earn's father and a tree. To say any more would spoil it. Sarah Hughes Sky Sports main event, 10 a.m. Given his current form, Rafael Nadal appears to be a shoo-in to win this ATP 1000 event, even before he has struck a ball on the clay courts of the Foro Italico in Rome. But the world number one and top seed should take nothing for granted here, especially given the prowess of the defending champion Alexander Zverev. The 21-year-old German has been slowly ushering in a new era for tennis, thanks to his lethal serve and beastly backhand, which were used to great effect to defeat Novak Djokovic last year. The out-of-sorts Djokovic will be looking to turn back time, meanwhile, following a big dip in form with a victory here. Formula 1, the Spanish Grand Prix. Sky Sports F1, 2:05 p.m. Having won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, his first victory in 7 races, Lewis Hamilton is now back where he finished at the end of last, at the top of the championship. 4 points ahead of his main rival Sebastian Vettel. He heads to Barcelona in bullish mood. After all, he did win at the Circuit de Catalunya last year, staving off constant pressure from Vettel. Premier League football, the final game of the Sky Sports main event, 2:55 p.m. With the league title wrapped up weeks ago, the focus is on who secures Champions League qualification. Will Spurs, so dynamic for much of this, finish in the top 4 by beating Leicester City, or will Chelsea, travelling up to Newcastle, somehow usurp the North Londoners? The A to Z of the RHS Chelsea Flower Show. BBC 1, 6 p.m. Jennifer Saunders presents this entertaining and affectionate guide to the history of the Chelsea Flower Show, which is back for its 105th year. SHE's joined by Gardener's World presenters Arit Anderson and Francis Top-Hill, who travel the country to talk to some of those exhibiting this year. BBC Young Musician, 2018 Grand Final. BBC 4, 7 p.m. It's the moment that fans have been waiting for. Clemency Burton Hill and Josie Darby present this year's Young Musician Grand Final. Here, the 3 chosen musicians each perform a concerto alongside the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. British Academy Television Awards 2018. BBC 1, 8 p.m. Sue Perkins is our guide for the year's biggest TV awards. Among the gongs up for grabs are Best Drama, which sees The Crown up against Line of Duty, Peaky Blinders and The End of the F***ing World. There is also a nod for the beleaguered presenter Ant McPartlin with Saturday Night Takeaway. ITV, 8 p.m. Britain's Most Murderous Rural Idyll returns with an episode focused on murder at a Jane Austen reenactment weekend. Thanky DCI Barnaby Neil Dudgeon and D.S. Winton Nick Hendricks are on hand to solve the crime. Burma with Simon Reeve. BBC 2, 9 p.m. Wales, 10 p.m. Simon Reeve has an admirable knack for breaking down complex situations, which makes him the perfect presenter for this informative 2-part report on Myanmar. In the opener, he explores the plight of the Rohingya refugees. S.H. Patrick Melrose. Sky Atlantic, 9 p.m. In what is a strong week for drama, it doesn't come better than David Nicholls' elegant and devastating adaptation of Edward St. Auburn's cult novels. Starting with Bad News, the second book in the series will flash back to book 1 next week. Nicholls tells the story of the dissolute heroin-addicted Patrick Benedict Cumberbatch and his hysterical in all senses of the word trip to New York to pick up his father's ashes. Cumberbatch, often a slightly mannered performer, is a revelation in the lead role, making the troubled, arrogant Patrick both pitiable and pitiless while effortlessly commanding the screen. It's unmissable. Tomorrowland, A World Beyond 2015 BBC 2, 6 p.m. Not Me, Scott Wales, 7 p.m. Jetpack Ride to Gleaming Disneyland Utopia George Clooney as a grumpy inventor, Brad Bird's The Incredibles, spirited retro-futuristic adventure has a lot going for it, including Hugh Laurie's excellent performance as villain, David Nix. But it's also stuck with a screenplay that ties your brain in knots. Best forget the plot and strap in for the fairground ride. Eddie the Eagle 2016 Channel 4, 9 p.m. Forget Caped Crusaders. Watch a Dexter Fletcher film and you'll really believe a man can fly. This biopic of Michael Edley Edwards Taron Egerton, the Olympian ski jumper who in the 80s became an emblem of a very British kind of earnest haplessness, is wondery silly. The flying scenes are thrilling and Hugh Jackman, as Eddie's coach, brings a natural effortlessness. Muriel's Wedding 1994 Channel 5, 10:35 p.m. Toni Collette plays Muriel, a 22-year-old, overweight, ABBA-loving misfit from an unhappy home who dreams of her wedding day. But she has never ever been on a date. An old acquaintance, Rhonda Rachel Griffiths, convinces Muriel to escape their hometown and move to Sydney. This is a classic piece of Australian cinema, a hilarious film with a melancholic undercurrent and a moving account of female friendship. Monday Guilty Conscience Lee Ingleby and Hermione Norris credit, ITV I've had 7 years of my life stolen, and now I want justice, says a defiant David Collins, released from jail on a technicality for the murder of his wife at the start of ITV's new crime series. Screened over 4 successive nights, an increasingly common format in the binge-watch era, the drama follows Collins Lee Ingleby as he attempts to prove his innocence and punish those who've wronged him. Chief among targets are Collins' wife's hostile sister Alice Hermione Norris, who's currently raising his 2 children, and his former best friend Tom Elliot Cowan, who scotched Collins' alibi for the night of the killing. The police, meanwhile, are anxious to save face. They charge beady-eyed guy Kathy Hudson Angel Coolby to look at the case afresh, but she soon finds worrying inconsistencies in the former investigation. The show hardly breaks new ground, relying on the simple premise of guilty or not to drive the action, neatly swaying our sympathies along the way. But it's compellingly acted nonetheless, with both Ingleby and Norris on fine, emotionally intense form. And knowing the next episode is just a day away adds to the appeal. Toby Danzik Royal Recipes, Wedding Special BBC 1, 3:45 p.m. Ahead of Saturday's festivities, Michael Burke is joined by chefs Anna Hoare and Paul Ainsworth to pore over menus linked to royal romance. The first offerings include a pudding made for a love-struck princess. Stephen Hawking Night BBC 4, from 8 p.m. BBC 4 revisits the life of the late physicist Stephen Hawking through its archives. The evening opens with an episode of The Sky at Night from 2016, in which Hawking discusses how developments enhanced his groundbreaking theories on black holes. The Search for a New Earth rounds things off, with Hawking exploring the possibility of humans living on other planets. In between is another chance to see the 2004 drama Hawking, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, and an absorbing Horizon documentary from 2005. Heart Transplant, A Chance to Live BBC 2, 9 p.m. It's the challenge of turning death into life, says the voiceover in this film following 7 patients waiting for heart transplants at Newcastle's Freeman Hospital. The film shows how a groundbreaking process means that organs can now be sourced from further afield, therefore widening the donor pool. Catching a Killer, A Knock at the Door Channel 4, 9 p.m. This fascinating series following a real-life murder investigation returns with the case of pensioner Hang Yin Leung. In January 2017, Mrs. Leung was violently attacked by burglars in her Milton Keynes home. Before she could give the police a statement, she became ill and in hospital 11 days later. Sky Atlantic, 9 p.m. This sprawling sci-fi thriller has upped the goriness for its second series, as the robotic hosts take control of their destiny. In Episode 4, bigwig D-Los Peter Mullen loses patience with a stalling William Jimmy Simpson. Meanwhile, dumped in the wilds, a disoriented Bernard Jeffrey Wright stumbles across a familiar face. TD Myanmar's Killing Fields Channel 4, 10:20 p.m. In this unflinching documentary, reporter Evan Williams looks at the plight of Myanmar's Rohingya people, who have been subjected to 5 years of persecution at the hands of the country's military. TD My Life So Far 1999 AMC, 5:10 p.m. Colin Firth stars as an eccentric inventor living on a Scottish estate during the 20s in this twee drama from Chariots of Fire director Hugh Hudson. It's seen from the perspective of the family's 10-year-old son, whose peaceful family life is shattered when a series of traumatic events, including the arrival of a suitor for his sister and his uncle's alluring French fiancée Irene Jacob, happen over a tumultuous year. Saving Private Ryan 1998. Sky 1, 9 p.m. Steven Spielberg's vision of the Normandy invasion won Oscars galore. Starring Tom Hanks and Matt Damon, it chronicles a geek squad who have been ordered to track down Private Ryan Damon, so that he can return home to his mother, who is grieving for her 3 other sons. The opening, which depicts the Omaha Beach assault, provides some of the most visceral battle scenes in cinema. Sky Cinema premiere, 9:45 p.m. This unashamedly daft prequel to Annabelle, the 2014 chiller which played with a demonic ragdoll from the Conjuring series, is far more effective at giving you the kind of goosebumpy working over the creators are going for. Following the death of their daughter, toymaker Sam Anthony LaPaglia and his wife Esther Miranda Otto set up an orphanage. Tuesday Wedded Bliss, Catherine Drysdale and Richard Goulding credit, Channel 4, 9 p.m. It would take a particularly thin-skinned member of the Windsor clan to take offense at this glee idiotic comedy. Back for a one-off episode after 2 excellent series, this special sprinkles just enough grains of truth or plausibility, at least to give it a satirical pungency that is reminiscent of peak-era Spitting Image. Here, Prince Harry Richard Goulding seems more excited about his stag do than his wedding to Meghan Markle. Catherine Drysdale, the Duchess of Cambridge Louise Ford, is battling both the machinations of her jealous sibling Pippa Morgana Robinson to retake centre stage, and her husband the Duke of Cambridge's Hugh Skinner attempts to dodge a vasectomy. Meanwhile, Beatrice Ellie White, the pick of a magnificently game cast, takes time away from her fashion vlog to have a political awakening after a chance encounter with Jeremy Corbyn Tom Basden, while her mother Fergie Katie Wicks is offered a TV reporting gig for the wedding, forcing her to choose between family loyalty and filthy lucre, from dance routines and dream sequences to Windsor Council's tramp catcher Paul Kay. This is daft and shrewd, but never mean-spirited. Gabriel Tate Catching Feelings Netflix, from 12:01 a.m. Vaguely reminiscent of a Woody Allen film with its preoccupation with one city, Johannesburg, rather than New York, a neurotic lead and the lives and loves of its well-heeled citizens. Kagiso Lediga's romantic comedy stars Lediga himself as an author whose happy marriage comes unstuck under the influence of his hedonistic tutor. Pangolins, the world's most wanted animal. BBC 2, 8 p.m. A pangolin, the most poached animal in the world, risks becoming endangered. Here, conservationist Maria Dieckmann travels to China to raise awareness of the impact that the nation's extravagant demand for pangolin products is having. The Split. BBC 1, 9 p.m. An extramarital dating website is Ed, which means that business picks up at both Defoe's and Noble Hale, as Abby Morgan's fun melodrama continues. But as the wedding of Rose Fiona Button draws near, it becomes clear that the repercussions of the air close to home. Nigeria's Stolen Daughters. BBC 2, 9 p.m. Scotland, 11:15 p.m. In this deeply moving documentary from the This World team, some of the 276 school girls kidnapped by Boko Haram in 2014 speak for the first time about their experiences and their efforts to return to normal life. Sky 1, 9 p.m. The Shadow. A buddy movie landmarks Lethal Weapon and Bad Boys, the loose cannon and the straight arrow cops, the quick-fire banter, the spectacular stunts and bursts of gratuitous violence, enrobes this new comedy thriller written by and starring Noel Clarke and Ashley Walters. The pair play maverick cops prepared to bend a few rules. In the opening episode, they attempt to bring down the killers of an informant with an infant son. What Bulletproof lacks in identity, it makes up for in verve and swagger, making it a worthwhile addition to a crowded field. GT. Meet the Markles. Channel 4, 10 p.m. Channel 4's pleasingly iconoclastic approach to the royal wedding continues with Amelia Diamond Oldenburg, latterly of hit YouTube series Chicken Shop Date, heading in search of Meghan Markle's family, the first boy she kissed and the sort of life she once lived. GT. Night Mail 1936 B.W. Talking Pictures TV, 7:35 p.m. This inspired film, about a London to Glasgow postal train, was made as a promotional piece by the General Post Office Film Unit during the British documentary film movement and represented a creative peak for the genre. Its most celebrated sequence features music by Benjamin Britten and the narration of W. H. Auden's poem Night Mail over rhythmic montage images of racing train wheels. Film 4, 6:45 p.m. When actor Michael Dorsey transforms himself into Dorothy Michaels in a desperate attempt to get work, complications arise as he falls for a female friend Jessica Lang and her father Charles Durning falls for him. Although you never quite believe that Dustin Hoffman in drag would convince everyone that helps a woman, it doesn't matter. Tootsie is lots of fun, and it's a sharply observed social satire, too. Hot Shots, 1991 Comedy Central, 9 p.m. Reinventing Charlie Sheen as a deadpan comic actor. This cult satire, from director Jim Abrahams, is a spoof of over-the-top 80s action dramas. It focuses on Topper Harley Sheen, a handsome fighter pilot assigned to the Navy on a mission to destroy Saddam Hussein's nuclear plants. First, however, he must overcome his personal demons. It's puerile, but nevertheless very entertaining. Wednesday, A Changing World. Munroe Bergdorf examines gender credit. Channel 4, 10 p.m. Transgender model and activist Munroe Bergdorf burst into the spotlight last year when L'Oreal sacked her over controversial Facebook post. Then the Labour Party appointed her as an LGBT advisor, but she quit after protests ensued. In light of that, this documentary might be seen as an attempt by Bergdorf to rehabilitate her image. It's a personal film focusing on the stages of her transition from male to female. Cameras follow Bergdorf as she undergoes facial feminization surgery and walks the runway at New York Fashion Week, all of which is very empowering, and as she discloses information about incidents of violence and abuse that SHES suffered. A more sensationalist segment sends Bergdorf along to a meeting of radical feminists who are openly hostile to the notion of transgenderism, quite a niche faction, but the scenes allow Bergdorf to clarify her notions of gender, that it's not a binary matter, but more fluid. Bergdorf has a warm message about acceptance, and showcasing her so sympathetically is likely to give her image a much-needed boost as well as educate viewers on the gender quake shaking up society. Vicky Power. Europa League football, Atletico Madrid v. Marseille. BT Sport 2, 7:45 p.m. So it wasn't to be the fairy tale finish for Arsene Wenger. Despite being the better team over the two legs, his Arsenal side were knocked out by Atletico Madrid. The Spaniards scored on the break through Diego Costa and defended, as ever, with ruthless efficiency. Their opponents are Marseille, who make the short journey to the Groupama Stadium in Lyon. The French side snatched a dramatic extra-time winner to reach the final after surrendering their two-goal first-leg advantage against Red Bull Salzburg. ITV, 8 p.m. UTV, 11:45 p.m. This easily digested series delivers more tales from the terminals. This week, the airport staff struggle with a crush of Russian children heading home from British boarding schools, while a mobile crane driver disrupts airfield action by stopping in the wrong place. The Secret Life of the Zoo. Channel 4, 8 p.m. Cute spider monkeys and an infant capybara provide the R-factor in this trip to Chester Zoo. But not all of the new arrivals are welcomed into the bosom of their family. Newborn naked mole rats get trampled during a vicious jostle for power to be queen. Mystery of the Lost Paintings. Sky Arts, 8 p.m. Sixth Sunflowers. The second of Vincent van Gogh's 7 sunflower paintings was destroyed by U.S. bombs during the Second World War. This captivating documentary explains the Japanese influences behind Van Gogh's sunflower artworks and follows a team of Madrid-based artists and technicians as they attempt to recreate the painting in forensic detail based only on a poor-quality 1921 reproduction. Love in the Countryside. BBC 2, 9 p.m. In this third trip to the farm, the charming rural dating show sees dairy farmer Peter pick a partner, sheep farmer Christine overcome her nerves on 2 dates, and equine vet Heather make a surprising choice of suitor. Channel 4, 9 p.m. It's hard to watch this emergency room documentary without shedding a few tears. Its measured stories of love and loss always deliver a gut punch of emotion. And so it proves in this first episode of a new series, when the husbands of 2 air patients share the stories of their spouses. VP John Richardson, Ultimate Warrior Dave, 10 p.m. A self-confessed neurotic who suffers from obsessive-compulsive disorder, John Richardson has formulated a chat show around analyzing his fears. These feature on a big display board and include Bitcoin, inconsiderate sneezes and, inexplicably, Mary Berry. Basically, it's an excuse for Richardson and guest comedians Susie Raffel and Josh Widdicombe to rib each other and jokes about embarrassing subjects. VP Paper Towns 2015 Film 4, 9 p.m. Before Fangirl Phenomenon. The Fault in Our Stars showing on Film 4 on Monday at 6:30 p.m. John Green wrote this minor young adult hit, which makes for a slightly awkward film. It has a narrator in the pubescent Quentin Nat Wolfe, whose obsession with his chicly rebellious, fast-disappearing neighbor Cara Delevingne has him following a trail of clues to track her down, aided by his prom-obsessed friends. Fast Furious 5 2011 ITV2, 9 p.m. Justin Lin gives the street racing franchise legs with this series' high sweet spot, starting with a pretty spectacular prison break and subsequent chase, and peaking with a bank vault whipping around at crazy speeds through downtown Rio. Prepare to witness two bollards being clonked together, as Vin Diesel and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson square off as Diesel's crew must pull off one last job. The Last Samurai 2003 5 Spike, 9 p.m. A shameless vanity project it may be, but nevertheless Edward Zwick's period thriller is beauty shot. Set in 19th century Japan, it stars Tom Cruise as Algren, an embittered Civil War veteran recruited as a mercenary to help train a new infantry division and quell the threat of a samurai rebellion. But when he's abducted by his enemy and educated in the Bushido Code, he decides to switch allegiances. Thursday Rise of the Robots, Ivano Jeremiah and Gemma Chan credit, Channel 4, 9 p.m. It may have half the budget of H-Boss Westworld, but Humans has always been Forgive Me the more human show. This is particularly obvious with this third series, which like its US counterpart, follows the fallout from its since gaining collective consciousness. Where Westworld chooses to couch that fallout in flashy scenes and tricks of games, Humans tells a more interesting story of distrust, betrayal and the price of slavery. The story picks up a year after what is now being termed Year Zero, with memorials held for the thousands who. Meanwhile, politicians are calling for the destruction of green accents, and synthetics companies have already created a new army of compliant orange eyes. As for our various protagonists, Laura Catherine Parkinson discovers that representing synths has severe drawbacks, while Anita Gemma Chan and Max Ivano Jeremiah are struggling to convince their fellow synths that friendship holds the key. It all makes for tense opening, although, as always the series is at its best in its smallest moments. A talk about synth safety to class of primary school children is especially well observed. Sarah Hughes Royal London One Day Cup Cricket, Lancashire v Nottinghamshire Thursday, Sky Sports main event, 1:30 p.m. Action from the One Day at the Emirates Old Trafford Cricket Ground. Britain's Best Home Cook BBC One, 8 p.m. It might seem like a mishmash of every other cooking show, but I'm increasingly taken with the BBC's attempt to replace Bake Off. Claudia Winkleman does a great job as host, Mary Berry as Mary Berry, and this week the gang have to cook pies. What's not to love? Paul O'Grady, For the Love of Dogs, India ITV, 8:30 p.m. Diwali, the Hindu Festival of Lights, takes center stage for this final episode of the heartwarming series. In this episode, Paul faces a difficult decision when he falls in love with an elderly black Labrador at one of Delhi's oldest dog shelters. Ambulance BBC One, 9 p.m. Things are pretty dark from the offset in the fourth episode of the Fly on the Wall show, as there are a number of Category 1 emergency calls from people with life-threatening illnesses or injuries. Among the call-outs is an elderly lady who has stopped breathing, a man choking on his food and a possible suicide attempt. £1 Million Menu BBC 2, 9 p.m. Presented by First Date's maitre d' Fred Cyriax. This new series is essentially Dragon's Den for restaurants. Here, the hopefuls pitch their idea for a new pop-up restaurant in Manchester in the hope of making their dreams a reality. SH Missions BBC 4, 9 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. Missions to Mars are big news on television, with a big-budget drama The First, starring Sean Penn, arriving on Channel 4 later this year. This taut French thriller gets in there early with a creepy story about an independently financed mission to the Red Planet that goes terribly wrong. Sky Arts, 9 p.m. Anna Maxwell Martin plays Agatha Christie in an entertainingly goofy take on what happened during her infamous 1926 disappearance. It's worth catching for Bill Patterson's version of Arthur Conan Doyle, the week that WASNT Sky 1, 10 p.m. recorded close to transmission for Topicality. Sky's newest comedy show reunites Alistair McGowan and Ronnie Ancona for the first time since The Big Impression in 2004. Here, they join others in providing voiceovers for footage of politicians and celebrities. SH My Darling Clementine 1946 B.W. Film 4, 11 a.m. John Ford's wistful take on the story of Wyatt Earp is still the one against which all other versions of this western should be judged. Ford claimed to have known Earp, played here by Henry Fonda, and based the final shootout at the OK Corral on what had been told. But what stands out are the performances, the magnificent setting, and numerous inventive and exquisitely staged scenes. A View to a Kill 1985 ITV4, 9 p.m. when a microchip maker Christopher Walken comes up with a scheme to wipe out all his Silicon Valley competition, it's up to 0007 Roger Moore to end his evil plan, while also defeating his ruthless friend, Mayday Grace Jones. It's absurd, and Moore looks more like an overfed stockbroker than a lean, mean spying machine, but it's ridiculous fun, especially the fight to the death on the cables of the Golden Gate Bridge. Sci-Fi, 10 p.m. Director Tobe Hooper, who made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, tones down the gut-churning horror but still ramps up the tension to nightmare levels in this Steven Spielberg-produced chiller. It has one of cinema's most spine-tinglingly scary moments. There here, sing-songs a little girl kneeling before the TV. They are the spirits, at first playful then increasingly malevolent, who terrorize a suburban family. Friday The Look of Love, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle credit, BBC One, 7 p.m. With less than 24 hours to go before the wedding, broadcasters are going into overdrive with an onslaught of royal-flavoured programming this evening. First comes They're Getting Married in the Morning, the tone of which should be given away by its one-show time slot. The unlikely trio of Kirsty Young, Hugh Edwards and Dermot O'Leary will be reporting the latest news, including interviews both with those due to play key roles on the day and members of the public who have been getting as close as they can to St George Chapel at Windsor Castle, for a different, more hard-nosed take on events. The Meghan Markle Effect, 11 p.m. on Channel 4 sees Fatima Manji wrangle a panel of experts and interested parties to assess the likely impact of Markle, the wedding itself and indeed what it tells us about the future of the monarchy. Finally, for the fluffiest perspective possible, there's Harry-Meghan, A Royal Romance Lifetime, 10 p.m., with relative unknowns Murray Fraser and Parisa Fitz-Henley playing the happy couple in a magnificently cheesy and loose interpretation of what might have happened but almost certainly didn't. Gabriel Tate Unreported World Channel 4, 7:30 p.m. Reporter Sahar Zand and director Alicia Ras follow the progress of the Me Too movement in Bollywood, where women have been speaking out over assault, harassment and rape in an often dangerously hostile environment. Tap America, How a Nation Found Its Feet. BBC 4, 8 p.m. Clark Peters, aka Lester Freeman from The Wire and, more pertinently, the creator and star of West End musical Five Guys Named Mo, fronts this excellent documentary on the history of tap dancing and its deep connections to African American culture in the United States. To be a professional tap dancer, you need to be a historian, says modern tap icon Michelle Dorrance, and Peters here demonstrates this in absorbing, passionate style. The Bridge. BBC 2, 9 p.m. Saga Sophia Healin was last seen leaving a trail of blood on the prison floor as she walked to freedom. We now find her in hospital, but in what sort of condition? Henrik Thur Lindhart and his unpleasant new colleague, Jonas Mikhail Burkar, meanwhile, are following their murder investigation into Red October when another body turns up in Sweden. Sky Arts, 9 p.m. The Whistle Stop series profiling a decade ends with the music of the 90s, in all its glory and dross. We won't see much in the way of Boyzone or Britpop, as it's an American series. Instead, expect Nirvana, Tupac, Alanis Morissette and the Backstreet Boys. A surf over the shallows of American pop rather than a deep dive, but very entertaining, even so. GT Frankie Boyle's New World Order. BBC 2, 10 p.m. Not for the easily offended, Boyle's often funny, witheringly astute assessment of the world returns for a new series of stand-up, discussion and audience interaction with regular panelists Sarah Pascoe, Catherine Ryan and Mona Chalabi, plus special guests. Young, Welsh and Pretty Minted. BBC One, 11:55 p.m. NE, 12:55 a.m. Want to earn six figures? Meet YouTuber The Gonth, a social influencer who makes £900 for posting on Instagram, and a 19-year-old swimwear designer, and they're by no means as objectionable as you might fear. GT Cargo 2018 Netflix. From today, Martin Freeman stars in this Australian zombie movie first shown at the Tribeca Film Festival, in which his character Andy has 2 days to find somebody to take care of his infant daughter and to protect her from his own changing nature after he is chomped on by his newly turned wife. It's a strong entry from first-time feature filmmakers and co-directors Ben Howling and Yolanda Ramka, who eschew scares for survival-esque thrills. Sky Cinema premiere, 8 p.m. Charlize Theron's ice-cold super spy makes Bond look arthritic in this thriller. With her peroxide locks, flowing white trench coat and wholly unimpressed manner, she plays tough when sent to Berlin undercover just before the collapse of the wall. A British operative has shown up dead, and there's a web of intrigue to disentangle with the help of a scuzzy station chief James McAvoy. The Bourne Ultimatum 2007 ITV4, 10 p.m. Matt Damon returns for another crunchingly violent installment of the pulsating spy series. Jason Bourne Damon, the amnesiac CIA agent, is trying to find out his true identity before double-crossing CIA executives assassinate him. Why? Well, once he recovers his memory, Bourne has access to secrets that would be their undoing. Paddy Considine and Julia Stiles co-star. Television previewers Toby Danzig, Sarah Hughes, Gerard O'Donovan, Vicky Power and Gabriel Tate.